All right, everyone, welcome to this AMN special report. I'm joined here today with one of our very top practitioners, Scott Robinson, all the way from Sydney, Australia. So welcome, Scott.
Welcome, thanks. Great to have me.
It's great to have you on, man. So Scott's been doing some wonderful things with a lot of clients, but what I wanted to do with this report was to just make everyone aware of something that has blown me away basically over the past couple of months. I think it's been that Scott's been working with a particular client. We're talking about a 21-year-old female who was diagnosed with Rasmussen's encephalitis. This was in 2008, and she had a right hemispherectomy, which what that basically means, if you don't know, guys, is that basically this lady had an entire half of her brain removed, and the prognosis for the condition was that they either remove half of the brain or she dies. And that's right, Scott? We're on the right page with that?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, yes, exactly what she was facing. That's exactly it.
So that's a pretty rough diagnosis and prognosis for anyone, but thankfully the neurosurgeons did an amazing job and saved her life. But then she was left with certain deficits, right? She was left with a left hemiparesis, which resulted in very limited use of her left arm and hand. And she had effects of the gait. She had a spastic antalgic gait as well. So we can imagine that this poor individual was left with a massive loss of function, a huge detriment to her life. But the upside of all this is that she had a life still to live. So she was out there basically being told by a neurosurgeon to try and find somebody to see if they could help with her, because she'd been on a real decline for the past 2 or 3 years. Her function had been deteriorating. She had fractures to both of her wrists, I'm assuming multiple falls and multiple issues in her daily existence. And the neurosurgeon had basically said, if we don't find something out there in the world of all these people that, you know, that your trainers and therapists and all the rest of it, to help you, you're probably going to spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair.
Yep,
and that's where she was at. And that is basically where I'm going to let you, Scott, pick up the story and say how you guys met and what you've been doing, what you've achieved with this wonderful lady.
Yeah. Okay. Look, it's a pretty amazing story. She's an amazing girl. Look, so I feel very privileged just to be able to get to work with her. She's an amazing attitude, and she almost refuses to allow herself to be seen as disabled, which is fantastic. She's very determined and fiercely independent, which is awesome, and it's certainly been a bonus for us in treatment. So, look, where we crossed paths was exactly as you said. She was told, she was basically headed towards a wheelchair, and specifically her neurosurgeon said, you need to find, the best you could possibly do would be to find a personal trainer with a neurologic background. I was quite impressed with that, because I wasn't even really aware that a lot of neurosurgeons knew that people like myself existed. So that was comforting. Anyway, look, I got a phone call from another client who said that she had met this woman at a party and got talking, and so this client of mine threw my name in the hat. And the mother really didn't know anything about me, but she gave me a call and just said, look, I appreciate this whole neurology thing might not be, or you might not have a neurologic background. I appreciate that might not be you, but I've been told you're a good personal trainer. Could you do some exercise with my daughter to hopefully help her avoid ending up in a wheelchair? So look, it was pretty nice to be able to say, look, that is my background, and I'd love to get to work with her. So we've now been working together for about 3 months, so which has been amazing. So I guess to talk you through what I've theorised over and what we've kind of put together, and the path that we're heading along. I think I'll start with the theory. So having had half of her brain removed, I think a lot of people are familiar with the concept of having a phantom limb. So if you have an arm amputated, it's quite well documented that you can still feel pain where pain or sensation where that limb was, where it used to be. So the representation of that limb is still there in the brain, and you can feel pain or sensation even when that arm no longer exists. What this young girl, I believe, has been suffering with to some extent, is kind of almost a phantom brain scenario. So we've been able to pick up charge and be able to pick up links, scanning through her homunculus, so scanning through the topographic maps in an empty cortex, and find links there that really they shouldn't be there, because there's no brain there to be linked to. So essentially what we've been doing, and I am very grateful. I've never been more so grateful for having completed pretty much all of the AMN education, because I think it put me in a pretty good space to be able to attempt to front up and deal with a case like this. So essentially, we've been just working on trying to clear as much noise out of her system as possible. So as much of that charge that is going on, and I think what's happened to her, and one of the reasons why she had been deteriorating so much, was there's literally just so much charge in all systems in her body. It's literally like I think a ridiculous volume of noise bouncing around inside her head, and there has obviously been some rewiring. There's obviously been a rewiring process that's gone on, because she did previously have some usage of the left side of her body, and then that deteriorated markedly. So that initially filled me with a great degree of hope, because if there had been some rewiring, and we were then able to clear a lot of that noise that was now filling up the system, if we were able to clear the noise away, then we should be able to get hopefully back to kind of a blank canvas with just one hemisphere to work with. And then from that point, once we've got the blank canvas, start making links with the remaining cortex and the existing left arm, which still isn't functioning at 100%. Yeah. So I've got a long plan of how I want to try and get that to happen. But as far as the AMN system goes, initially we started off with all of the homeostasis material, so all of the interoceptive, the deep systems, or the unmyelinated fibers in the body. And there was a huge amount of limbic material to get through, huge number of limbic issues to get through. So you never know what you're going to be faced with or what is going to come up in a scan. And her mother asked me initially, how long would this assessment process or how long would this scanning process last? And really all I could say to her was, look, how long's a piece of string? I have absolutely no idea. Yeah. We just have to scan and see what comes up, and we just need to clear whatever's there, and then we can get working functionally from there. So if you could imagine having, I guess it's probably tough for anyone to imagine having half of your brain removed, but if you can imagine that happening to you at the point that you're going through puberty as a young girl, and being sort of left, as she described to me, in a hospital bed, with all these changes taking place in your body, and being pretty much paralyzed, and having people having to wash you, and there were a whole bunch of other emotional issues going on with the family and whatnot at that time. So she had a huge amount, a huge number of emotional issues, or a charge relating to emotional issues that needed to be cleared. So once we got through that, we cleared nociception from the scar site, and the scar on her, which runs right down the middle of her head, is 16 centimetres long, 1 centimetre wide at its narrowest, and 3 centimetres wide at its widest. So it's a huge scar. And I guess for any AMN practitioners out there, they'll most likely already be aware just how strongly scars and injury sites surgical scars can influence the body and influence the nervous system, and affect the nervous system, I should say. So clearing that injury site or surgical site as a representation on the brain was massive, and that brought about a big change for her. So we've been able to restore some function to her arm. She can now lift her arm up where she couldn't before. She could, when we first started together, she was able to move her arm a couple of inches away from her body. She had no use of her fingers. They were all basically all curled up, chronically facilitated, and she could walk with a very pronounced limp and a significant foot drop, and she would fall over from time to time. And so as we've worked together, it's been quite amazing to see function starting to return. She was completely disconnected. She had no control over her anterior core, and we've been able to restore some function there now, which is great. It's just weak, but she can actually activate, and she can hold herself in flexion. So her anterior core can now fire, which is huge. She's able to get up and down off the floor or off the ground unassisted, which is huge, because for a number of times she'd fallen over and is just unable to get up, unable to get off the ground. So just a change like that is life-changing for someone like that. Incredible. So yeah, that's been pretty amazing. So look, so we're at the stage we're still clearing charge. We've worked all the way through. We've worked all the way through the interoceptive systems. We've cleared all the charge from all of the growth screening that we've done through unmyelinated fibers in the body. I'm sure we'll probably find more correlations down the track linked to other things. But for the moment, it seems like we've cleared the bulk majority of it. We've gone as far as doing a gross neuroskeletal scan of the spine, and cleared a bunch of issues related to that. And we've had a number of strength gains and a number of functional gains related to that. We've still got a whole heap of other scans and everything to go. We're probably, for the plan that I've laid out, we're probably 15% of the way through it, and we've already had significant gains. But I think the big thing for me, where I really want to go and what I'm really looking forward to, I think, experimenting with, because I believe it's going to be quite effective from what I've seen. I'm really looking forward to remapping and relinking. I guess when linking her left side, which was suffering with a lack of function, with her left cortex, and basically working our way through all of the representative points on the brain, and then linking them with the areas where she's lacking function. So I've sort of theorised a few ways of how to do this. I've done it with functional clients a couple of times for fantastic results. But I've never had to do it crossing over to the ipsilateral cortex. So we'll see how that goes. But at the moment, all indications are, I don't have any reason not to believe that we won't be able to do it. So far, she's responded very well to everything we've done.
That's amazing, Scott. So I'd like to just briefly kind of summarise a little bit for what we've just kind of been through. So anyone watching this who has an interest in what we do as AMN practitioners, one of the reasons I wanted to do this interview with you is the fact that what you and your client are achieving, I didn't even know was possible with the system that I've developed and that you guys have so amazingly taken on and are running with out there around the world. So it's important information that I'd like to get out. A couple of things I'd like to clarify for anyone listening to this, watching this, who isn't familiar with the system. When we talk about, say, for example, Scott's mentioned that there were several limbic issues. What we are not doing as practitioners is there's no diagnosis involved in this. There's no stepping on toes of any psychotherapist or anything like that. We're not trying to influence a memory. We're not trying to change someone's behavior. What we are simply doing is utilizing a system that works with one of the most fundamental biologically important systems of our physiology, which is bioelectricity. And what you're describing is the fact that she had a whole lot of static in the body, right? So there's a whole lot of noise, a whole lot of static mess in the system, and that occurs to a smaller degree in anyone who has an injury or any pain. There is static, there's noise.
Great. Yep.
And it means that the brain can't see the body as well. And what our system does is to allow the person to be able to, when we say scan, we're talking about touching and finding areas of the body, linking them with systems within the brain, linking them with organs, linking it with the immune system, linking it with all of these different structures, and just finding out where that noise is, and then providing an intervention, which is very, 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 very simple, is providing another electrical stimulation via just another form of touch at the end of the day, which brings that static down and brings the charge in the system back to within a normal physiological range. And when you do that, even apparently in situations like this, with as skilled a practitioner as you can radically change someone's life, even if they've had half of their brain removed, they have lost complete function of one side of the body. There's been a period of time where she was falling and could not get up unaided. And I just think it's incredible that this is even possible. And I think it's an amazingly inspiring story for anyone who is a therapist of some kind, anyone who's going through something as rough as this, to know that there is hope out there if you find the right person with the right creativity, the right analytical mind, the right thought process, and the right tools to be able to really help someone like this. And I just think it's a very important story to tell. So I really appreciate you coming on and talking about it. But I just want you to cover a little bit as well. We had a brief discussion before we went into this, talking about, the neurosurgeon is somebody who's at the very top of their field, and their job is to basically to save lives. Their job is to find out if there's something that they can treat or operate on, which is going to change and save a person's life from a situation that would otherwise be the opposite of that. And the neurosurgeon did that beautifully. But there was a little bit of an intervention, which of course is based on evidence-based medicine, where they utilized a particular procedure, which I believe was a Botox treatment. Is that right?
Yes.
And I'm not in any way knocking any kind of procedure. That's not what I'm saying. I just want to talk about what kind of happened in this case and what you found, and then what results you were able to get and what you had to work through following that kind of intervention.
Yeah, okay. So, look, I guess going back to the neurosurgeon, so apparently, her first neurosurgeon that she had when she was a little girl, when she had the procedure done, they're all very, very happy with, said he was a wonderful surgeon. Down the track, she was, I think, as an adult, then passed off and handed over to a different neurosurgeon who they said was kind of less engaged, and basically, I guess, was at the stage that you'd alluded to before. So her life had been saved, the procedure had been done, and then it's now no longer his, I guess it's not his job, or it's not his area of expertise to,
they're in the
for
grey
ongoing
area,
care.
right? The individual is in the grey area, and that's kind of where all of this stuff kind of fits in, right? All the stuff, this weird stuff that we do, kind of fits in. So crack on.
Yeah. So where she was at was with all of this, exactly as you said, with all this electrical static bouncing around in her system. She was I said, these chronic cramps and muscle strains, fingers being completely curled up and not being able to use them. Her arms stiffening up, her legs stiffening up, just through chronic facilitation, and she was unable to relax those muscles in any way. I believe the neurosurgeon suggested that it would be a good idea to go and have a Botox treatment. So she had this Botox treatment right about around the time that we started together. I can't remember exactly. It may have been just before or just after, but it was around the time that we started. And then as the Botox kind of took a hold and peaked, I think they regretted it very much, because it basically it relaxed everything. And apparently it's the only time that she's actually done the Botox treatment. And I kind of feel that what we were doing was actually quite effective, and it was relaxing a number of systems in her body, which was, I guess, as far as the neurosurgeon or the neurologist was concerned, was unforeseen. So they're obviously not expecting that she's going to be able to have this charge and all this static electricity that's bouncing around in her system, have that removed by any other means other than by injecting a drug that would do that for her. So it certainly seemed to me like the Botox was just way too strong, or just way too much, or whatever it was. She just lost a lot of control, lost a lot of function in her body. So where muscles were previously all in chronic spasm, they were now just tight, not in spasm, because they'd been chronically shortened. So all these muscles were still just very tight and very short, but everything was relaxed, and she had minimal usage of anything. So it was a bit of a battle. We kind of sidetracked from the program a couple of times to try and stimulate muscle spindles and actually try and get some function back for her, because she had absolutely no function in her hand or in her arm or even in the leg at times. So it was a bit of a sideways step, but even in that, we did manage to stimulate a few areas, and we did manage to get a little bit of function back for her, which I guess which filled me again with hope and optimism. It wasn't the time in the program that I'd planned to be doing that, but it did give us an insight into the fact that I think when the time comes to start stimulating all of those spindles and looking to try and fire up muscle activity, it appears we can already do it. So I'm pretty optimistic about what we're going to be able to achieve.
Yeah, the human body's a crazy thing, huh?
It is amazing.
Yeah. So you've been working very much centrally, let's say, central nervous system stuff, interoceptive systems, working along what appears to be some kind of residual representation of the right cortex through the cranium, which, I mean, that's what you're finding. That is a form of evidence where you're finding, you've got findings based on the system that you've learned, and you've got the evidence of the fact that your client, the person, is changing and improving, her function is improving, and you're saying that even when you had to go out and work peripherally, so more kind of spinal cord level stuff, that again she was able to adapt and change. So that's hugely encouraging.
Yes, correct.
I wish you both a lot of love and luck with continuing your work together. I think it's going to be a great success story for you both. So why don't you just how about you just summarize for us the changes so far that you've managed to achieve together? What is it that compared to from where she started and where she is now after the amount of time that you've worked with her, what has she managed to achieve?
Okay, so look, as I said, when we started together, starting with her left arm. So she had almost no use of her left arm. When we first got together, she was able to move her left arm an inch or two away from her body. If she really wanted to reposition her arm in any way, she would have to take her right arm, grab a hold of her left arm, and then move that to wherever she wanted it to be. We've got that now. She came in the other week, and we're assessing balance, and I've given her the cue of, look, give me zombie arms out in front, please. And I always need to correct myself because I'm so used to just saying zombie arms to people that to be, in this case, to try and be more politically correct, I'll say, "I'm sorry, zombie arm, just give me one." And she was very, very happy to just lift up her left arm and say, "Have a look at that," which was all of a sudden it was amazing. That had come good after working with the scar on her head and clearing that surgical site, from clearing that as an injury site, as it's represented on her brain. We've been able to help her to get herself up and down off the floor, which is amazing. As I said, so she was suffering with quite a few falls, and when her system was at its worst, or at its most dysfunctional, she was unable to get herself back up off the floor without any assistance, or even she wasn't even able to climb up using a chair or a stool. So to be able to get back up off the floor unassisted is huge. When you're someone that is walking with a dysfunctional gait pattern, and you're prone to falls, it must be a very scary thing to know that you could fall over and be stuck somewhere and not be able to get back up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of life changing to be able to have to have an experience like that. We did just working with sagittal suture and the scar clearance. So it was really interesting, and I guess for any of the guys that have done any of the mastermind level work or the homeostasis work that know about the maps on the brain. So basically, when we were clearing the scar, there was charge and issues in all cortices of a brain, on the side with the cortex and the side where there's a void, which was really interesting. As I said, we're able to find representations on that side. There were also representations in her visual cortex, which we played with, and there were links to her hypothalamus. There were links to her vermis cerebellum. So we're able to pull all those together. And when we cleared the charge relating to the scar, I had an inkling that her balance may well improve. So we did a Romberg's test beforehand. And so the Romberg's test, for those who don't know, is basically trying to balance with one foot, with your feet in the line, so one foot in front of the other. So for this girl, with her left foot in the back, so the left foot was the dysfunctional foot, or the spastic foot. So if the left foot was in the back, she could balance with a little bit of sway. So you'd call it a failed test because she was swaying all over the place. But I was impressed that she could do that. With the left foot in front, she was unable to stand. She would fall straight. She fell straight over. After we just cleared the surgical scar and cleared that as an injury site, she was able to stand with the left foot behind, no sway, arms out in front, rock solid, and with the left foot in front, she was able to stand with sway where she hadn't been able to stand at all. So she could stand there and she would be swaying a little bit, but all of a sudden she could stand and balance. So her balance improved markedly, which was fantastic. So and then to be able to see her, just the hope and the optimism that instilled in her was huge. And definitely, so I think emotionally and stress wise, she's greatly changed. I think she's far more optimistic. She's much happier. She says she's incredibly relaxed after our sessions, and generally just goes away feeling really good. And in this particular case, she seems to exhibit some benefits, some improvements at the time of the session, and then she goes away and she tends to keep improving for the next day and a half or so. So I usually get a message a day or a day and a half later to tell me where she's at. And then there's been further change and further functional gains from there pretty much each time, which is great.
That's amazing. Yeah, Scott, it's been it's a great story. I really thank you.
It's ongoing.
Yeah. Ongoing. Yeah, I want you to keep us posted with how you guys get on. It's probably going to be a bit of a long road to returning this individual to as good a function as you can. It sounds like you've done an amazing job already in trying to achieve, let's say, what is her new normal, and trying to be able to build on that new normal to a new place and driving that neuroplasticity. And and basically just trying to put that person's body and that person's brain in a position that it can create a new environment, create an environment which can allow that person to function at a level which enhances their life. I mean, that's what this stuff is about, right? So I'm really appreciative you talked to us about it. I wish you both the best of luck and keep us posted on how it's going. And as ever, it's been a pleasure, and we shall speak to you again soon, Scott. Thanks.
Much appreciated, and I feel very privileged to be able to talk about it. Very privileged to be able to get to have the skills to be able to work with someone like that and actually make a difference in their life and actually help. So, yeah, thank you for all the help and all the education. So it put me in this position.
All right, thanks a lot, Scott. Cheers.
All right, thank you.